bit busy these days.
I would
figure
say
out
so.
where they're going.
Yep.
Also, what did Joel Siegel's instincts tell him about Michael Douglas's new movie? We'll have a review of Basic Instinct in the next half hour. Leading the news at this hour, the presidential primary results in Illinois and Michigan. Morton Dean has that story and all the other news of this day. Good morning, Mort.
Good morning, Mike, and good morning, everyone. All the winners in yesterday's political contest say the voters are calling for change. Democrat Bill Clinton won big in 2 Midwestern primaries. In Illinois, Clinton won 52% of the vote. Paul Tsongas was second, Jerry Brown third. In Michigan, it was Clinton again, 49%, but Tsongas and Brown switched places, Brown second, Tsongas third. Clinton says he's the man with the message and the momentum. ABC's Mike Von Fremd has more.
The people of Illinois and Michigan sure know how to celebrate St. Patrick's Day.
Illinois and Michigan are Clinton's first big victories outside his southern base of support. He did it once again by winning the lion's share of the black and the blue-collar vote. With a head of steam, he now takes his campaign east.
On to New York, on to victory in November, on to a new future for the American people. Thank you very much.
While Clinton's surging campaign had the look of a national candidate on a roll last night, Paul Tsongas's campaign looks in trouble. He says he will continue despite his poor showing in neutral territory, and he accepted last night's defeat with class.
Let me begin by congratulating Bill Clinton on his 2 victories tonight. The fact is he went into 2 large states and did well. And when someone does something well, you have to stand back and acknowledge it and give him credit.
Jerry Brown claimed victory in his second-place finish in Michigan, and he says he's changing the very nature of politics in America.
No, this is not a good old boy operation. We're not here to get along and go along. We're here to confront a corrupt status quo that no longer serves the American people.
Jerry Brown has taken his Let's Shake Up the Status Quo campaign onto Madison, Wisconsin, a liberal part of a very liberal state that Brown seems to feel is his next best shot. Mort?
Mike, the votes in Illinois and Michigan really say a lot about Clinton's resilience and campaign organization, don't they?
Yeah, he's proved that he's got the money, that he's got the organization. But Mort, last night his people were telling reporters that they're about to go into some pretty tough territory, trying to lower expectations a bit. They say that Connecticut is fertile ground for Paul Tsongas with its upper suburban neighborhood. And they also say that in New York, there's a notoriously tough press corps that may have at it with this good old Southern candidate.
Okay, thank you very much. Mike Von Fremd reporting on the results in Illinois and Michigan yesterday. On the Republican side, President Bush says the voters have endorsed his approach to change in America. The president says he's virtually assured of the nomination now. In Illinois, it was 76% for Bush, 22% for Buchanan. In Michigan, 67% voted for Bush, 25% for Buchanan. As for the delegate count, the president has 744 delegates, more than half the number he needs to clinch the nomination. For the Democrats, Clinton has 950 delegates, just less than half of what he needs. It's twice as many delegates as Tsongas has. South Africa's future is in black and white this morning. The Election Day numbers have been added up. Whites turned out in record numbers yesterday and voted in favor of sharing power with the black majority. It was a vote of confidence in President F.W. de Klerk, who had warned whites to say yes or face chaos. ABC's Mark Litke has more from Johannesburg.
Even before the vote count was final, the trend was obvious. There had been an unprecedented turnout. More than 70% of eligible white voters went to the polls. And throughout this make-or-break referendum campaign, that was said to be the key to victory for the yes vote. The earliest returns showed those favoring a continuation of the reform process were winning by a 3-to-1 margin. For most whites, this was probably not a vote of conscience, but a vote for survival. President de Klerk's government had apparently succeeded in convincing a majority that South Africa could not turn back the clock on reforms. To do so would enrage the black majority and lead to civil war. South Africa would be shunned by the rest of the world, economic sanctions reimposed. This country still faces enormous economic, political, and social problems. Whites are still very afraid of the ongoing brutality and killings in the black townships. But now it appears that South Africa can move forward with negotiations between the white government and the black majority, leading to a new constitution, an interim government, and eventually an election in which all South Africans can participate.
Mark, how do you think the blacks in South Africa are going to respond? There's been an awful lot of black against black violence, some of it inspired by whites.
Well, Mark, there's no question that the blacks will be relieved at the outcome. However, they were never very happy about this referendum in the first place. They had to stand by bitterly as once again a white minority decided their future. They've also been asking, when do our lives get better? After 2 years of reforms, the situation for many blacks has grown much worse. They still live in terribly impoverished townships. There are over 7 million now living in squatter camps around major cities looking for jobs. The sense of despair is very deep, and that has been another major factor in much of the black-on-black violence that we've been seeing.
Mark Litke, we spoke with him in South Africa earlier this morning. Voices in the rubble and a scene of desperation. Rescue crews are trying to dig out people they hear under the rubble of the Israeli embassy in Buenos Aires, Argentina. A bomb destroyed the building yesterday. At least 7 people were killed, more than 100 others injured. Argentina is now asking the CIA and Mossad, the Israeli Secret Service, to find who did it. The House bank scandal has landed in the laps of 3 of the president's cabinet members. Defense Secretary Richard Cheney, Labor Secretary Lynn Martin, and Agriculture Secretary Edward Madigan overdrew their bank accounts while they were serving in the House. President Bush said he's standing by all 3. Yesterday, the White House said it's checking the records to see if the president ever overdrew his account when he was a congressman. These are not the checks and balances the founding fathers had in mind. And that's the news. Here are Mike and Sam.
Okay, Mort, thanks very much. It is now just about 7 minutes past the hour. Spencer's off today. Sam Champion from WABC TV here this morning to tell us about the weather. And the folks down south have some serious weather to contend with.
Yeah, they're waking up to an awful lot of rumbles, some rough lightning this morning, too, and in some cases 60-mile-per-hour winds. All that's going on Louisiana, Arkansas.
Turned out to be heartbreak states for Paul Tsongas. In Illinois, Governor Bill Clinton beat former Senator Tsongas by almost a 2-to-1 margin. And in Michigan, Tsongas finished a distant 3rd behind former Governor Jerry Brown. Paul Tsongas joins us this morning from Hartford, Connecticut. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, tough night. In your speech last night, you were very gracious about your defeat, but some say that you sounded maybe a little less like a candidate and more like a loyal Democrat ready to support your party's nominee. Would you say that Bill Clinton has wrapped up the nomination yet?
No, we have a long way to go. I think Jerry Brown pointed that out. I simply, you know, I've been in politics for a long time. When someone does well, particularly in 2 states like that, I think you have that obligation. But we're now here in Connecticut. It's a state where I'm not a stranger, so the disadvantage of having fewer finances will be less pronounced, and we think we can do well here on Tuesday.
Well, throughout this campaign, you have been saying that you could beat Governor Clinton in the neutral states, states that were not home turf to either candidate. Illinois and Michigan would certainly qualify as that, and yet you lost. Where do you see yourself winning now at this point?
Well, let me preface by saying that in the 8 states before Illinois and Michigan, I had won 6 of them in neutral territory. But we went into 2 states where there are enormous TV markets, and to the extent that we simply did not have the same resources, we lost those states. Same thing happened to me in Texas and to some extent Florida. So in the smaller states where the difference in resources is less pronounced, we do very well. So we're here in Connecticut. We expect to win this on Tuesday. I said it's a must-win state for us. And then hopefully go into New York, Wisconsin, etc. Again, the advantage of a New York and a Connecticut is that people know me much better, so the hurdle of being a stranger is simply not here.
But you call Connecticut a must-win state. Now, if that does not happen, if Bill Clinton is the Democratic nominee, will you support him?
I will support any Democrat. I mean, I got into this race when the odds were very difficult because of George Bush. We are simply going into economic decline. And it seems to me that 4 more years of George Bush is simply not going to be appropriate to any definition of our children's future. So I would support any Democrat and will do so. Well, I intend to be that Democrat, but I think generically this party simply has to change its message and get on to the election in November.
Well, looking at who the party might be, if Bill Clinton does win the nomination, would you accept an offer to be his running mate?
I don't think that would make any sense. We simply have very different views. I mean, I'm a hard choice candidate, and I would find it very difficult to be part of an administration that I disagreed with on the need to make those hard choices. So I think it's better that there be somebody else. I would not be able, when asked about things like the middle-class tax cut, to do a 180 degrees turn in my position and do so with any credibility. The only alternative would be to embarrass an administration, and I wish not to do that.
All right, Senator Tsongas, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And as we mentioned earlier, former California Governor Jerry Brown was a surprise second-place finisher in Michigan, yet he finished a distant third, just a state away in Illinois. And earlier this morning, I spoke with Jerry Brown from Milwaukee. What do you make of this? Why do you think you did so well in Michigan and yet so poorly in Illinois?
Well, because I barely went there. I went to the St. Patrick's Day parade. We were not able to buy any television, and we're up against a very powerful juggernaut in Mr. Bill Clinton. He's clever, and he has a lot of money, and he's got a lot of politicians in his corner. We're standing against all that. True, I come from the political process, but knowing how it's failing, I've decided to go to the grassroots, build an insurgent movement, and make a frontal assault on this whole system.
All right, now where do you plan to pick up those votes then? Because clearly Bill Clinton has almost nearly 50% now of the votes that he needs, of the delegates he needs. Where do you think you're going to win?
Well, we got to pick him up in Wisconsin and New York, Minnesota, go back to Iowa and get some of Harkin's delegates, and win in places like California and New York in such a convincing way that Democrats realize that Clinton is not the person to lead this party. And I don't think he's the person to lead the party because I don't think he represents the level or extent of change required to create the justice and the opportunity that this society desperately needs. I mean,
but if you look at the numbers at this point, it does look as though he has the best shot at the nomination. Are you concerned at all? You're constantly taking shots at him, might then damage his chances of beating a Republican in the fall.
Look, this is not about helping his chances and not helping him. It's about telling the truth about our country. It's being ripped apart. I believe democracy is being undermined. And unless somebody sounds the alarm and gives the call to arms, I really fear for our future. So I'm going to do everything I possibly can to give the people of our nation a chance to take back their democracy, to take back our country, which I feel has been taken over by consultants, by big money, and by a governing elite that is so separated from the American people that the gap is almost impossible to describe in words.
But if Bill Clinton is the nominee of your party in the end, will you support him?
I'm not prepared to say that today. Let's see what happens. I find our differences are growing, not diminishing. And what is so important to me is that the kids in the inner cities, the people that are being laid off in Detroit and in Wisconsin and other places, that somebody stand up and speak for them. And everywhere I go, I hear the same cry. Who's talking for us? Who's on my side? And I don't care who the party's putting up here. I'm going to give the truth, and I'm going to make sure that America has a true opposition to represent the ideals and the goals and the hopes of how our nation was founded and what I believe can pull us together as a people.
Former Governor Jerry Brown, thank you. Right now, almost 15 minutes after her victory in a Senate primary, did voters see the race as a battle of the sexes when Good Morning America continues?
A two-term senator, Alan Dixon from the state of Illinois, in the Democratic primary. She's the Cook County Recorder of Deeds. Her name is Carol Mosley Braun. She only decided to run against Dixon after he voted in favor of the confirmation of Supreme Court nominee Clarence Thomas last fall. And Carol Mosley Braun joins us now from Chicago. Good morning. Good to have you with us. Congratulations.
Good morning. Thank you.
In a nutshell, if you could, why do you think you won? Was it as simple as Dixon voting for Clarence Thomas?
Oh, no. It was the entire record, and the people of the state responded to my message of making government work better for Illinois, giving voice to folks who had been locked out of the Senate. And there was enough volunteers and volunteer effort and commitment and hard work and prayer, and it worked.
The Dixon people have been rather magnanimous in defeat, I guess you'd have to say. Senator Dixon complimented you on the quality of your campaign. In fact,
and I would compliment him as well.
It seemed like he and also Mr. Hofeld, the other candidate, they almost ignored you. They spent a lot of money battling each other, and you managed to come in, surprising maybe even yourself?
Well, we knew we could win. We continued with the plan. We started and we went door to door and talked to people and had volunteers come together in meetings, and we talked about the issues. We stayed positive and we stayed on the substantive issues. And if anything, the people of Illinois chose substance over sound bites in this election.
You were quoted as saying that you believe Senator Dixon was simply too conservative for Illinois Democrats. How, if you are elected in November, how would you be more liberal?
Well, it's not a matter of conservative or versus liberal. It's a matter of working on behalf of the people's interest. And our state is hurting, as much of the country is. And I think folks had a sense that the Senate had lost touch with Illinois, that our senator had lost touch with Illinois, and they really wanted to see more attention paid to the economic concerns of our state. And I've got the ability and the background and the skill to do that.
Senator Dixon had not lost one single election in 43 years. You now have won an election that will make history, because you would become the first black woman in the history of this country to serve in the United States Senate, and the first Democratic woman at that. And that's got to give you a sense of history, I would presume.
Oh, yes, yes. I'm honored and delighted, again, to have an opportunity to be a voice for working people, a voice for women, a voice for minorities who previously did not have a voice in the chambers of the United States Senate.
Now, you got about, I think, 38% of the vote, according to our latest tabulations here, just squeaking at a victory. And I wonder whether, it used to be if you win the Democratic primary anywhere near Chicago in the state of Illinois, you're gonna win the general election. I presume that it might be a little bit tougher this time around, considering the fact that you didn't have a majority in the primary.
Well, it was a three-way primary, so it would have been tough to do that. But I think that the Democrats in the state are going to come together. People who want to see government work better are going to come together, and we're going to win in November. I think it's going to be competitive, but then the election in November will be competitive in any event. So I'm really optimistic that we will go to the United States Senate, and we will have made history in this state.
What would your first legislative agenda item be if you were to get to the Senate?
I haven't gotten that far. Thank you very much.
What do you want to accomplish, though? I mean, what specifically? You talk about helping the working class and bringing a more expanded voice. What specifically, though, would you like to accomplish?
I specifically would like to get the federal government more involved in education. I think that funding of education, helping support education, is a major omission, and that's the direction I'd like to move in. There was a lot of concern for bringing federal dollars back to Illinois. Our state does so poorly in that regard, so I'd want to work on that. There are a number of areas. Healthcare is another area. So there is an agenda, and goes to the kind of economic security issues in the future of our state that we talked about all through the campaign, and I'm ready and willing and anxious to get started working on those in the Senate.
There are some who see in your victory, though, and in the defeat of several other incumbents in the state of Illinois, a warning shot now to other incumbents. Do you think that you're the first of many new candidates to suddenly find their way in?
Well, I know that government's got to work better for people, and government's got to serve the little guy better, and so we can do that.
Well, we thank you for being with us, Carol Mosley Braun. Congratulations to you. We'll take a break right now. In the next half hour, the chairman of the Republican and Democratic parties when we continue.
I'm going to look awesome.
Introducing the Jenny Craig Weight Loss Rebate.
I needed a push.
What a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day. We'd like to thank Mark McEwen for sending some snow up our way.
That is Vermont's Bolton Valley Ski School with our theme this morning. Welcome back to CBS This Morning. I'm Harry Smith.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Paula Zahn.
Good morning. I'm Mark McEwen, and they're welcome. I did send snow up their way. More snow coming here, by the way, tomorrow.
Isn't that lovely? How many inches, Mark?
4 to 8 inches.
Has it even snowed here this
3 inches of snow in New York City all year. Syracuse had almost 160 inches of snow.
And you know what?
Go figure.
I'm going to miss this storm. Heading to L.A. to do Murphy Brown after today's broadcast.
Getting out just in the nick of time, it sounds like. Can you tell one kind of mutual fund from another? Well, our money editor, John Stair, is going to be with us in just a couple of minutes to sort that out, and also to tell you what happens to your taxes if you sell your home at a loss, which seems to be happening with more and more frequency these days. Then the quality of care you get in coronary bypass surgery could depend on where you live and even the color of your skin. Dr. Bob Arnott is going to fill us in on that.
Also coming up in this half hour, Gene Siskel reviews two very different movies, the new comedy called My Cousin Vinny and the brutal street gang film American Me.
And stay with us just a little bit later for a very important story, the referendum to decide the fate of South Africa. We're going to be talking with Archbishop Desmond Tutu.
First, let's get you caught up on the latest news this morning. Last night's primary results have virtually ended the Republican presidential contest and may have gone a long way toward doing the same for the Democrats. Bill Clinton celebrated solid victories in both Michigan and Illinois. He now has almost half the delegates needed for the Democratic nomination. Jerry Brown came in second in Michigan, third in Illinois, and promised to start raising hell this morning in Wisconsin. Paul Tsongas was disappointed by his showing, but predicted victory in Connecticut next week. On the Republican side, President Bush said his two victories yesterday gave him enough delegates to virtually assure his nomination. Patrick Buchanan fell below his previous vote totals, and the challenger began scaling back his campaign effort. In another contest yesterday, Illinois Democratic Senator Alan Dixon lost his bid for renomination. He was beaten by Carol Mosley Braun, a county official who entered the race after Dixon voted for the Clarence Thomas Supreme Court nomination. In other news this morning in South Africa, the right-wing opposition is conceding defeat in the whites-only referendum to end apartheid. Results show a decisive victory for President F.W. de Klerk and his policy of reform. Alan Pizzi reports.
And from the newsroom, in the race against the clock to get results...
The first results in were from rural areas, and they were hugely in favor of yes to reform. The first no vote was from the conservative heartland of Petersburg, but even that was only a 14% win for those who reject political reform, a result that was almost an embarrassment for the Conservative Party, which totally controls the area. The reformers were already beginning to talk of what next.
The important thing now is to try and do something about uplifting the standard of living and providing employment for those millions of black people who haven't got jobs.
Black trade unions turned a scheduled sales tax protest into what they called a referendum march, a foretaste of the demands that blacks will be making for the process of political change to be accelerated.
We have waited too long for our liberation. We can wait no longer.
Time was also on the minds of the conservatives who reject reform. They were already complaining that there had not been enough time for them to organize their campaign before the voting. If the trend continues, there are fears of how the extreme right wing will react. The neo-Nazi Afrikaner resistance movement said even before the voting began that they would use force if, as they put it, the country is handed over to the African National Congress.
The government says that won't happen, that the reform process will be done carefully. It looks as though whites will give an overwhelming go-ahead for the government and its allies to press on. The question now is whether blacks will be happy with the pace. Alan Pizzi, CBS News, Johannesburg.
Israeli officials are vowing revenge this morning for the deadly attack on their embassy in Argentina. 7 people are known dead, and up to 30 people may still be trapped in the rubble of the embassy building in Buenos Aires. Officials believe it was a car bomb that leveled the building. Argentina is calling on the CIA and Israeli intelligence to help hunt down the bombers. Time to take a look at the financial markets this morning. The dollar is mixed. London stock prices are lower. And in Tokyo, the Nikkei index fell 153 points, a decline of 0.75%. Wall Street starts the day with the Dow Industrials above 3,256. The Dow gained almost 20 points yesterday.
100% uh-huh.
Only 2 American-made luxury automobiles provide both driver and passenger side airbags. One of them is a Lincoln. And the other one is a Lincoln. With Lincoln, it's easy to be on the safe side. Lincoln, what a luxury car should be.
Experiencing virtual reality tonight at 7:30.